How are you all doing today, guys? Everyone enjoyed Kelsey's talk this morning? Thought it was really inspiring. We're super excited about what we're doing with new and exciting things at Civo. And actually, what I want to cover a little bit here is how we're reviewing and looking at the landscape around us and what we're doing to respond to it. I think we have a really different approach in what we're trying to do, and actually, part of that is building alongside our customers and our community. So it's always a really good point to play this back, hear what you guys think, and have opportunities to inject into it. The point I really want to try and get across today, if you take anything away, is I want to talk about how what's happened this year has changed about what we've done for the last decade in cloud. We're kind of getting to this strange point where tools like AWS and Azure have been here a decade. It's right, it's interesting to think about. And actually, we're building our cloud now. And how do we do it differently with the lessons learned and try and almost think about what the modern future of that looks like. Very warm introduction, but I think just a little bit about me. I've spent a lot of my career always focused on machine learning and artificial intelligence. That's across research, application, industry. I spent the majority of my career at AstraZeneca, where I helped take them from being a kind of science and biology company and move that into what they do to have machine learning and statistics as a third core competency. Alongside that, I productionized a lot of cross-domain machine learning in the commercial area, R&D, and I've seen the width of problems. I don't think having seen it all, you can understand it all, but I think from the perspective there is a really interesting part here where machine learning has to hit domain, a bit at the coalface of that. Outside of work, I spent the majority of my time helping AWS set up their machine learning qualifications and exams. If anyone's an AWS certified specialist, I wrote that exam, and I spent a lot of time with them helping sculpt what skills were important for people to be successful in machine learning in the cloud. And the qualification I think is most important and I'm proud of is I've probably spent about 8-9 years staring at GitHub, pulling repos for the interesting new innovations that have come out. Just to start out, who was here in Tampa at the beginning of the year? I see a couple of people across. So this is where we really kicked off our machine learning journey, and we really wanted to, A, listen, but then also do something differently. The only instructions I got given was don't turn up late looking the same. I think actually as a premise for what we're trying to do with machine learning, that works perfectly for the era of ChatGPT. I sat down, took you guys through a little bit of where I think the pain points in machine learning are. The majority of machine learning projects fail, normally because they can't return on investment. Complexity drives through, or you pivot into somewhere that's not your expertise traditionally. We started pushing through on how machine learning and the effort and the time you spend on that isn't what people traditionally stereotype it to be. And actually the biggest challenge we're seeing there is actually infrastructure and setting up that infrastructure and configuring it is where the biggest time sink is. And the feedback we got back from that is, I just want a short path to solve my problem, add value, and impress my customers. And I can kind of appreciate that. What I'd really like to do is kind of start to dig into how we've approached this area and made it so that you're not wasting your time having to leverage that sunk cost of getting machine learning started. And at the same time, this hasn't stopped you from being able to backtrack and change and control your destiny. We'll kick off a little bit with some review on the 2023 AI landscape. I really want to go through some of the really exciting announcements from this year. This will lead really well into the AI panel that we're going to pick up afterwards, so please hang around. We've got some interesting futuristic conversations on where AI is going from some industry thought leaders. I then want to talk about what cloud and open source are doing now is affecting that and how they're responding. I think it's a really interesting cause and effect conversation. In addition to some of the product announcements we did yesterday on stage, I'd love to dig into a little bit more technical detail about what our machine learning products are doing and the bits we're proud about. And then I'd love to look back at what we're doing here with Civo and how we've come so far in 9 months. So to kick off, major breakthroughs in 2023. And I think the first thing we can't not talk about is generative AI. And I imagine everyone in this room has picked up ChatGPT and had a go at it. And it's pretty much changed everyone's perceptions of what a machine learning model could be like over a web page. And what we've seen happen this year is large language models have become the front of house for machine learning. And actually, we've understood that the input for how these complex machine learning models are coming across is these types of language models. This could lead to more complex models in the background and actually acting as a middleware. to try and abstract and help humans navigate across the artificial intelligence landscape. And it also adds a lot to the concept of an agent, where we're moving from this kind of chatbot era to this autonomous agent that has responsibilities and memory and almost computes the larger impact of the work it's doing. And I think the interesting part about that is it's driving this generated content where we're seeing things like 65% of organizations talking about how their internal communications are now written by ChatGPT. And if you're in a large organization, probably somewhere there's a comms team that have just accelerated what they're doing 1 or 2-fold by just picking up an online tool that's £20 a month. ChatGPT also broke the Turing test. The quote I really liked about this was, "It's okay to change the goal if you've realized the ball's a different shape." And I think that fits the paradigm of our understanding of machine learning for the current present. And actually, I think what we expect from an artificial intelligence agent now is dramatically changing. And something we'll dig into a little bit later is open source is taking on the AI industry. And we've seen this before in cloud, with cloud native and these autonomous, democratized organizations trying to weigh in against industry. And I think there's some really interesting points about that. The biggest change we're seeing, I think, from a kind of consumer expectations point of view is the biggest audience for machine learning services right now is no longer engineers. It's everyone, and everyone is trying to leverage these tools at the same time. And I think that's a really different paradigm. You're not looking at how you make technical docs, you're looking at how you're making smooth, frictionless experiences. And then the biggest market segment that's paying for this right now isn't engineers or companies. Consumer AI, people paying for AI services directly, is becoming a really big market segment, exploding into billions. And no one saw it before January. And I think just to make sure we don't lose these points is we're back in the era of tech CEOs before Congress. It's a little bit like the Olympics every 5 years. And what we're really seeing here is UK, US, and EU channeling down to how they can land their AI regulations because they know they're holding back the floodgate of AI businesses. And they know they need to get this stuff in advantage up front. Everyone is aware that we don't have a one-size-fits-all for what this needs to look like. So I think what we've agreed here is iterative policy and legislation. That in itself means we need to be sharp on the expectations that delivers. And alongside this, the things that we're probably not talking about, which are also disruptive, some of the biggest advancements in quantum computing. And actually, this boom in robotics and automation, the largest sale of robot arms post-COVID, is still going on. And it's happening at the same time as these points. So I like to show this slide every year, partly because it just shows how much harder and harder it gets to pick an AI tool. This year's contribution is actually some ticks behind here about who backs open source and not. And the advice I would give anyone is if you're working on machine learning tooling, there is a gap in the market for licensed Apache 2 software. And we're still facing this fragmenting landscape that's not getting easier or a simpler path to be able to deliver on. We are seeing people start to move towards lower complexity tools, which I think drives that consumer behavior, which I think is a really interesting point for us to not lose sight of. And the really interesting part is generative AI feels like a multi-million-pound, complex, massive project that happens over there, when the reality of it is actually some of the most advanced, complex machine learning that's ever been made or published is probably 3 commands to run on your computer and is able for you to do that today. And we have to be mindful that we've got these conversations of things like ChatGPT costs $4 million to build. ChatGPT costs $700,000 a day to run. Now, the interesting part is that production cost or research cost? And are they carrying that debt into what they're doing with their operation? And I think the thing I'd really remind you to do is rely on benchmarks. People say you are what you spend your time and money on. You can see this very clearly with the model. This is probably one of the most disruptive technology aspects I've seen from the open source community in my career. And I think it tells a really interesting story. A lot of this still doesn't all feel like it's perfectly a straight path to the end of the story, and I think there's more of this to come. We see ChatGPT break the market. It comes out, takes it by massive storm, consumer adoption, 1 million people register in a week. The next week, by coincidence, Facebook leak Llama, their machine learning model. In 2 weeks, the open source community grab Llama, look at ChatGPT and say, these are the parts of it that's missing. This is what we need to do to Llama to make it perform like ChatGPT. And in that 2 weeks was an academic research breakdown that probably exceeded what you would do for a PhD, happening on GitHub by hundreds of people. They built those missing components, almost inspired by the architecture they saw with ChatGPT, and really wanted to continue this strain, and built it into Alpaca, a new model, worked under the existing licensing, but was built entirely on the mindset and the direction the open source community wanted to take it. Those people hang around another week. They get into a situation where they're competing with Google and OpenAI's large language model. I'm not saying you could go ahead and do this. You need the power of GitHub behind you. You most certainly don't need 4,700,000 a day. And I want people to realize that this technology is being democratized in front of them, and these numbers are intimidating people from picking up this software and running away with it. And the quote that I would probably put weight behind here that justifies this, and you can find this in the Google leaked report of We Have No Moat. I'd love to have the name of the person who said this. But open source is doing things with $100 and 13 billion parameters that we are struggling to achieve with $10 million and 540 million parameters. That's a scared statement. And if you start to look at where leaders were before ChatGPT took off and what they were saying communicatively to the research organization, is actually Meta are pretty sure LLMs aren't the solution. And I'm pretty sure LLMs aren't the be-all and end-all for what we're going to do with artificial intelligence. The conversation about it being an off-ramp, I think, is a really interesting point. This is the most effective path we have to deliver this experience today. That doesn't mean we should stop looking for the next one. Sam Altman has always predominantly confessed that the size of LLMs, don't worry. Doesn't matter. We'll also sell you a bigger LLM for more money. And then I think Andrej Karpathy, who I like to think always takes a neutral viewpoint on what's happening here, is he talks about this in the context of there are problems that are easy to build demos for, but are hard to build products and solve. And I think the interesting part about what we have here with ChatGPT is the really wide domain of which it's serving. So with that in mind, what we notice is machine learning has more velocity this year, more complexity, and actually we're probably expecting that to exponentially increase. And what we really want to make sure we can do is take everyone on the journey with us. We're trying to position technology that not only you can have as a Kubernetes engineer and a machine learning engineer, as an expert, but also, hey, I want to get a part of this democratization of artificial intelligence, but maybe I don't want to hire a data scientist. Maybe I want to be an expert in the business and what I'm solving, and bring that machine learning expertise into what we're trying to do. The example I'd love to talk about today, and we've picked up quite a lot of steam with this, and I think some really amazing conversations, and it was interesting to see how many companies work with audio. But what this effectively becomes is a really simple, accessible, high-performance machine learning model. And we want it to feel human, interact with the model, and you can drag and drop very simply and transcribe audio. What we would like our end users to do is use this as a little bit of the entry point to leveraging high-performance machine learning, but then also challenge us to what else we can do here to really push the boundaries of how you can do machine learning and add value with machine learning without having to spend 5 years putting your head in the books. This should play as a demo, and what you will see here is real time, and if anyone doesn't believe this is real time, I'm down on the stand for you to come have a look. And this is a 10-minute audio file we're uploading to this service. This will horizontally and vertically scale. So the length of the file or the depth of the audio doesn't matter. And the really interesting part of this is actually the performance you can return it and turn it around in. So 10 minutes worth of audio can land in as little as 7 seconds. And we haven't tested every edge case. Well, the truth being told is I'd really love customers to hold me honest on how we did test their edge case. This is high-performance machine learning. No barriers, no gotchas, no multiple scaling points of price. Just really high-performing machine learning put into the paradigm of Civo's regular transparent pricing. What I would love for this to become is where we start to make this the entry point where audio data, as in hearing, can start to become what we manage inside our artificial intelligence process. The next few bits we want to pick up are things like vision. And what you can see here is I'm starting to collect all these different data modalities into the machine learning ecosystem, because I can help you get your data into Civo. That's more important than being able to help you build an LLM. It's help you build an LLM that solves your problem. We would love to see things like speaker diarization, sentiment analysis of the audio and text come into this, and we want to prioritize that on what's solving your problems first. To achieve this, we actually took OpenAI's machine learning model, and we rebuilt it from scratch with high-performance techniques. Now, the interesting part about this is actually Whisper ended up being a very research-driven perspective of the model, and it didn't take into account lots of these types of high-performing infrastructure. Actually, that's the gap about why people can't take this model and make it run for them inside their business, is it's how we get this model, orchestrate it, and serve it. And the truth being told is the solution to that is Kubernetes and high-quality operations. We have 50 languages that it can translate across. A few of you would have saw a demo that I have where it deep fakes me into speaking Japanese. That's absolutely not on public release at the moment, but if you want to come see some of the things we're doing to expand onto this and move into generating content and the idea around live transcription that we're playing with, we'd love to talk to you about it. If you have a use case that you think would sort of help really orchestrate this problem, that URL there will get you access to the registration. And one of the last things we want to talk about is the new GPU cluster compute. Dinesh broke into this in a lot of detail tomorrow, but the chain that sits underneath the Civo UI is amazing. If you go to your clusters and you start to check out a GPU compute, you can receive 100% renewable energy powered NVIDIA A100s, passively cooled because they're submerged in immersion cooling. You get a more stable clock speed because the compute stays more efficient for longer at the lowest possible amount of energy draw. No fans to take your voltage. And actually, the density of these GPUs are probably above what you would get with a conventionally air-cooled device. And we see this as being the future of how this works. So the thing we want to do to be different isn't just give you the best experience of GPUs over VFIO, access to your drivers and access to your configuration, is actually, these are running in a council swimming pool in a net neutral carbon environment. And that's something we want our customers to prioritize as a direction they take their machine learning in. And we hope this is the first step to being able to shorten that path and just help get a really direct access to being a sustainable company. To get everyone being carbon neutral, carbon negative, part of that is about being able to take people on the journey with you as you do it. But then just to really quickly round up in the last few minutes, beginning of the year, I think we had a lot of conversation around where we were with machine learning, a few loud opinions from Josh about what we needed to do to fix it, some hard stats that we drew across the industry about exactly what those problems were. Alongside that, we're really proud, and in particular, Rishit Dagley inside my team has been not only studying and working on this, but submitting papers and research back to academia from industry about how to optimize these problems. And actually, things like more data might not be all you need for classification being submitted at ICLR is something we're really proud of for Rishit doing. And actually getting a paper into the PyTorch conference, first time round, I think is a really impressive attribute. So we'd love to keep doing what we're doing around research. Part of that is also if we could help understand your research needs. But I think the thing I really want to make sure we gather is these new products have landed really quickly. And what we really want to make sure is we're building these alongside our customers and prioritizing on the problems that matter to them most. Now, the thing I am proudest of out of these technologies probably isn't the speed we transcribe stuff or how amazing you can launch Kubeflow in 10 minutes when it takes 2 hours on AWS. It's actually that if you're someone who wants complete control over all of their infrastructure, all of their GPUs, we have an option for you that I think serves what would be the best in class for developers. Say you're a machine learning engineer, but you don't have the experience in Kubernetes, and you just want that direct access to a development environment, auto-scaling infrastructure, but don't want to be weighed down with configuring your infra, Kubeflow as a service ends up being a really powerful tool for you and now supports a wide range of GPU compute. And then if you really want to cut your teeth into machine learning and leverage the benefits of that, without managing Kubernetes or machine learning, tools that we're bringing alongside in that managed space around Civo Recite really help hit the nail on the head. And we don't mind the way you do it. Jupyter, bring your own Docker container, VS Code, data scientist, ML engineer. I think what we should really do is be honest with our community and open up these interoperability paths. This is our Terraform, Pulumi, Crossplane. These are the different ways people want to access these services, and we want to hear from you about how you'd like to do that. So I think, just to round off, Kubeflow as a service moves from alpha to beta. The big addition to that is some smoothness of the user experience, but then also the addition of GPU compute. Civo Recite, which is a closed alpha. We're really interested in listening to our customers here, running benchmarks, high-performance analysis. We'd also really like to understand the way you would scale, and you scale your problem, because we want to battle test our technology alongside those rock-solid metrics. And then, of course, last, GPU clusters that offer 100% sustainable compute behind them. And that launches today.